Maria Alvarez had spent years convincing herself that ghosts couldn't touch her. The ghost of her marriage, the ghost of Javier's voice when it turned sharp and cruel, the ghost of the man she once believed would protect her. All of it had been locked away the day he was sentenced. Prison had become the coffin she buried him in, and though she knew he lived, to her, he was as good as dead. Life after him was fragile, but hers. She worked at a small florist shop in San Antonio, arranging lilies for funerals and roses for anniversaries, learning the quiet comfort of routine. Each morning she brewed coffee for one. Each night she locked her door without fear of fists pounding it open. She told herself the past was behind her. It was an ordinary afternoon when the coffin cracked open. She had stepped out on her lunch break, crossing a busy downtown street. Heat shimmered off car hoods. Children tugged on their mothers' hands, the hum of everyday life surrounding her. Maria's gaze drifted idly and froze. Across the street, near a cafe patio, stood a man, tall, broad shoulders she remembered too well. His laugh cut through the noise, deep and commanding. He bent down, scooping up a little boy who squealed with joy. Beside him stood a woman, younger, smiling as though she had found safety in his arms. Maria's heart slammed against her ribs. For a moment she thought it was a cruel hallucination, a trick of sunlight and memory. But when the man tilted his head back, the light caught his face. And there he was. Javier, her husband. The man who was supposed to be locked behind concrete walls, serving years for crimes that had shattered her. Maria staggered, one hand gripping the lamppost as the world tilted. The sounds of traffic blurred into a distant roar. She blinked, waiting for him to vanish like smoke. But he didn't. He kissed the woman's temple, set the boy down and reached for the hand of a little girl who clung to his arm with trust. He looked happy. "No," Maria whispered under her breath, her throat tightening. "It's impossible. He's in prison. He has to be." But her body knew before her mind did. Every nerve screamed the truth. This was no ghost. This was Javier, flesh and blood, living free when he should not be. 1,000 questions clawed at her. How had he escaped? Who was this woman? Did she know what he was capable of? Maria felt both rage and dread coil inside her. Years of healing cracked open, spilling raw fear. She ducked back behind a bus stop, her pulse wild. If Javier saw her, if he recognized her, what then? Would he laugh? Would he come for her? She dared another glance. He was kneeling now, tying the little girl's shoe, the picture of fatherly devotion. To anyone else he was ordinary. To Maria, he was a wolf wearing sheep's skin. Tears stung her eyes. She remembered the bruises, the manipulations, the night she finally ran. And now, here he was, building a new life, as if his sins had been erased. The light turned green, cars surged forward, and in that blur of movement, Javier looked up, scanning the street casually. For one horrifying second, Maria thought his gaze locked with hers. She ducked her head, heart in her throat, holding her breath until the world steadied again. When she dared to look back, he was guiding his family into the cafe, laughter trailing behind him. Maria's legs felt like lead. She wanted to run, to pretend she hadn't seen him. But the seed was planted, truth and terror wrapped together. If Javier was free, then everything she thought she knew was a lie. She turned away from the street, her chest burning, her mind already racing with possibilities. One thing was certain. The past she buried wasn't gone. It had found her again. And this time, it was smiling, holding children by the hand. Maria's pulse raced as she lingered across the street, half hidden behind the cover of a sun-faded bus stop. The world around her blurred. The honking cars, the chatter of strangers, even the burning heat of the Texas sun. All she could see was Javier. Javier, who should have been rotting in a cell, was strolling along the sidewalk with a woman and 2 children, as if life had always been this simple, as if his past had never happened. The woman clung to his arm, her laughter light, unguarded. She was striking, though in a different way than Maria. Youthful, glowing, with a confidence that radiated even in the way she carried herself. Maria's stomach twisted as she watched Javier lean down, whisper something into the woman's ear, and then press a gentle kiss to her cheek. The children, 2 of them, bounded ahead, one clutching a balloon, the other a cone of melting ice cream. Javier called out, "Stay close, mijo. Don't go too far." His voice was warm, full of affection. Maria froze. That voice, once rough, sharp with threats and anger, was now coated in honey. She remembered the way he used to spit words at her when he was drunk, each syllable like broken glass. And now he was playing the role of a doting father. Her chest tightened. She whispered under her breath, How is this possible?" A passerby glanced at her, startled, but Maria didn't care. She kept her eyes locked on the man she once called her husband, the man the state of Texas had sworn was behind bars. Javier bent to tie his son's shoelace, his movements gentle, patient. Then he looked up, and for a brief, shattering moment, their eyes almost met across the distance. Maria's heart stopped, but he didn't see her. His attention shifted quickly back to the boy, a warm smile spreading across his face. That smile. It wasn't the twisted smirk she knew from nights when arguments escalated into slammed doors and broken glass. It was soft, open, and terrifying in its unfamiliarity. Maria's knees weakened, and she clutched the metal pole of the bus stop for balance. Rage bubbled inside her, clashing with a fear that made her skin crawl. Was she losing her mind? Had she misheard the judge all those years ago? No. She remembered every word. Sentenced. Years. Locked away. So how was he here? Free, laughing, as if the life he once destroyed had never existed. The woman's voice carried across the street, clear and sweet. "Javi, let's head back. Dinner won't cook itself." Javi. The nickname rolled off Angela's tongue effortlessly. Maria's breath hitched. Once she had called him that. Once she had believed she was the center of his world. Now another woman wore that crown. Maria followed as they turned down the street, her steps silent, her body thrumming with adrenaline. Each movement felt like stepping deeper into a nightmare she hadn't chosen. She ducked behind parked cars, careful to keep her distance, her eyes never leaving the family. The little girl tripped, scraping her knee. Maria flinched as Javier rushed forward, scooping her up with a tenderness that felt like a cruel joke. He kissed the child's forehead, whispering words of comfort, his hand steady against her trembling back. The girl's sobs quieted. The woman, Angela, Maria would later learn, smiled at him with gratitude. It was the smile of a woman who trusted, who felt safe. Maria's jaw clenched. If only she knew. Her mind spiraled with questions. Had Javier escaped prison? Had someone covered for him? Or, worse, had the system set him free, quietly, without her knowledge, without warning? The thought made her stomach churn. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down into an abyss. Angela reached for Javier's hand, intertwining her fingers with his. Together, the 4 of them disappeared into a modest brick house at the end of the street, laughter trailing behind them like smoke. Maria stood frozen in the fading daylight. The world suddenly colder. She whispered, barely audible, "What have you done, Javier?" Her fists tightened. She couldn't walk away. Not now. Not after seeing this. She needed answers, and she would not rest until she had them. The front door closed, and silence fell. Maria's decision crystallized in her chest like ice. She would dig deeper, no matter the cost. Because if Javier could bury his past, she would be the one to unearth it. And with that, Maria turned and slipped back into the shadows of the street, her mind already plotting the next step. The night after seeing Javier with that new family, Maria barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. The smile, the way he lifted the little girl, the tenderness he had never shown her. The image carved itself into her mind, looping endlessly until the lines between memory and nightmare blurred. By dawn, she sat at her kitchen table, a half-empty cup of coffee trembling in her hand. Her apartment felt smaller than ever, the silence pressing in like a weight. She couldn't take it anymore. She needed proof. She needed to know she hadn't lost her grip on reality. Her fingers hovered over her phone before she finally dialed the number for the Texas Department of Corrections. The ring dragged on, and with each buzz her heart climbed higher into her throat. A voice answered. "Texas Department of Corrections. How may I help you?" Maria's throat tightened, but she forced the words out. "Yes, I'm calling about an inmate, Javier Alvarez. He was sentenced in—" She paused, the date flashing in her mind like a scar. "In 2012. Can you confirm his status?" There was a click of keys on the other end. The clerk's voice was detached, routine. "One moment." Maria's fingers drummed against the table. Her entire body buzzed with nerves. The voice returned. "Yes, ma'am. Javier Alvarez, ID number 142967. He is currently incarcerated at Huntsville U. NIT. No scheduled release date." Maria froze. The room tilted. She pressed the phone harder to her ear. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. She caught herself. "Are you sure? Can you double-check?" Another pause. "The system is accurate, ma'am. He's still in custody. Is there anything else you need?" Maria's lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she muttered a thank you and ended the call, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She stared at the black screen in disbelief. According to the state of Texas, Javier Alvarez was still locked behind bars. Yet she had seen him, living free, holding another woman's hand, kissing a child goodnight. Her chest tightened as paranoia clawed at her thoughts. Am I going insane? She stood, pacing the room, clutching her head as fragments of possibility swirled. Maybe she'd seen someone else. No, impossible. She knew that face, those eyes, that voice. So what then? Was it some elaborate trick? A twin brother she never knew about? A look-alike? Or worse, had the prison lied? The more she thought, the darker her theories became. Maybe Javier had bought his way out. Maybe someone in the system had been bribed to keep his name buried on a list while he roamed free. Her reflection in the kitchen window caught her eye. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot, haunted. She hardly recognized herself. The world felt suddenly unstable, as though the ground she had rebuilt her life upon was cracking beneath her feet. Maria sank into the chair again, her breathing shallow. "No one will believe me," she whispered to the empty room. Her friends thought she had finally moved on. Her family had begged her to stop speaking his name years ago. And now? If she told them what she'd seen, they'd dismiss it as stress, as grief, as madness. But Maria knew what she had witnessed. Her phone buzzed with a reminder notifications. The prison said Javier was still inside. Yet her eyes told her otherwise, which meant someone was lying. Maria's paranoia hardened into resolve. She couldn't ignore this. Not anymore. If the system wouldn't give her answers, she would have to find them herself. Her gaze drifted toward the window, where the world outside was just beginning to wake. She thought of that modest brick house, the laughter spilling out as Javier disappeared behind the door with his new family. Her pulse quickened. If the record said Javier was still in prison, then the man living in that house was a ghost wearing her husband's face. And Maria was going to expose him. The sun dipped low as Maria parked a block away from the house she had followed Javier to the night before. She sat behind the wheel, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her stomach knotted with dread, but curiosity burned hotter. She had to see it again, to prove to herself she hadn't imagined him. She walked slowly down the sidewalk, pretending to check her phone, pretending she belonged. When she reached the modest brick home, she froze. There he was, Javier, stepping out onto the porch in a t-shirt and jeans, the evening light softening his face. He looked older, yes, but unmistakably him. A child's laughter rang out, high-pitched and pure. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, darted into view, waving a crumpled drawing. "Papa, look!" he shouted. Maria's heart thudded in her chest. "Papa!" Javier knelt, smiling as though fatherhood had always been his destiny. He ruffled the boy's hair, kissed the paper, and pinned it to the porch wall with exaggerated pride. Then Angela appeared, her arm sliding easily around Javier's waist, her lips brushing his cheek. The sight was a dagger. Maria felt her breath catch, her eyes sting. This wasn't just an affair. This was a life, a family. She staggered back, resting herself against a tree, hiding in its shadow. Her body trembled, torn between fury and heartbreak. That night, unable to bear the weight of silence, she called her younger sister Sophia. Her voice cracked the moment Sophia answered. "I saw him," Maria whispered. There was a pause. "Who?" "Javier." Maria's words tumbled out, raw and frantic. "He's alive. He's free. He has children, a woman. He's living in Texas like none of it ever happened." "Maria," Sophia said carefully, "you told me he was still in prison. You even called, remember? They confirmed it." "I know, but I saw him with my own eyes. He laughed. He touched her like she was his wife. And the kids." Maria broke off, choking back tears. "How is that possible?" Sophia sighed, her tone heavy with concern. "You need to stop this. Whatever you think you saw, maybe it was someone else. You've been through enough. Don't drag yourself back into his world." Maria's voice hardened. "It was him. I would know Javier anywhere. And if he's out there pretending to be someone he's not, living some perfect life while his record says he's still locked up, then something is very, very wrong." Her sister hesitated before answering. "Maria, listen to me. Leave it alone. Men like Javier, they ruin everything they touch. Don't let him ruin what you've rebuilt." Maria stared at the darkened window of her apartment, her reflection staring back hollow-eyed and restless. She whispered, more to herself than to Sophia, "I can't. I need answers. I need the truth." The line went quiet. Finally, Sophia said, "Then be careful. Please. Don't let him see you." Maria hung up, her chest still tight, her thoughts a whirlwind. She should listen. She should walk away. But the image of Javier smiling with his children wouldn't let her rest. She knew with a terrible certainty that she was standing on the edge of something dangerous. The night air in Texas hung heavy, thick with heat and the smell of freshly cut grass. Maria's pulse hammered as she watched the house from her parked car, headlights off, her fingers drumming against the steering wheel. She had promised herself she would leave it alone. Sophia's warning echoed in her ears. But promises meant nothing now, not when Javier was living a lie in plain sight. When he finally stepped outside, trash bag slung over his shoulder, Maria seized her chance. She slipped from the car and crossed the street, her shoes crunching against gravel. "Javier." His name cut through the silence like glass. He froze mid-step, his shoulders stiffening before he slowly turned. For a long moment they simply stared at each other. Maria saw the flicker in his eyes, the recognition, the panic, before he masked it with a smooth smile. "Maria?" he said, feigning surprise. What are you doing here?"
Her chest tightened. "Don't you dare pretend. I saw you. I've been watching you."
Javier chuckled softly, a sound that once charmed her, but now sounded like poison. "Watching me? Maria, you've always been dramatic. You shouldn't—"
"Stop."
Her voice shook.
"You're supposed to be in prison. I called. I checked. They said you're still locked up.
So how are you here? With her? With those children?" His expression hardened for a heartbeat, then smoothed into mock concern. "You're not well," he murmured. "You always let your imagination run wild. Maybe you saw someone who looked like me. It happens." Maria's hands balled into fists. "Don't gaslight me. I know your face, Javier. I know the scar under your jaw, the way your eyes twitch when you lie. Don't tell me I'm imagining this." His jaw flexed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Maria, you need to let go. It's been years. Maybe you haven't healed. Maybe that's why you're seeing ghosts." The words stung. They wrapped around her chest, making her question herself for a fleeting second. But then she saw it again. That flicker in his eyes, quick as lightning. Fear. "You're hiding something," she whispered. Javier's smile faltered. He shifted the trash bag higher, glancing toward the house. Through the window, Angela's silhouette moved in the kitchen, humming to herself. The boy's laughter spilled out faintly. "You shouldn't be here," Javier said sharply now. "If Angela sees you, it'll complicate things. She doesn't know who you are." Maria's breath hitched. "Does she know who you are?" His silence answered her. Her heart pounded as she pressed forward, desperate. "What are you doing, Javier? Are you living under a false name? Did you bribe someone? Escape? Tell me the truth." His eyes darkened, voice a low hiss. "Walk away, Maria. Whatever life you think I owe you, it's gone. I've moved on, and if you're smart, you'll do the same." She flinched at the venom in his tone, but then anger steadied her spine. "No, you don't get to erase me. You don't get to play the loving father while I live in ruins, thinking you were rotting in a cell. You owe me answers." A car passed down the street, headlights sweeping across them. Javier stepped back into shadow, his face tightening. "If you push this, you'll regret it. You always were too stubborn for your own good." Maria swallowed hard, trembling, but her voice was steady when she said, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." For a fleeting moment, Javier's mask slipped again. His gaze darted toward the house, toward the woman and children who thought they knew him. The fear in his eyes was unmistakable this time. Maria realized then, this wasn't just about betrayal. Javier wasn't merely hiding a new family, he was hiding something bigger, something dangerous. She stepped back, her breath uneven, and whispered, "I'll find out what it is." Javier said nothing. He turned and strode into the house, leaving the door to slam shut behind him. Maria stood in the darkness, shaken, yet resolute. Whatever this secret was, it was powerful enough to terrify him, and that meant uncovering it would change everything. The confrontation with Javier left Maria raw, her nerves frayed like torn wires sparking in the dark. She had seen the fear in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. Words alone wouldn't prove the truth. To understand what Javier was hiding, she needed to step closer, dangerously close. So she created a plan. 2 days later, Maria walked into the local cafe near Javier's neighborhood. She wore her hair differently, styled in loose curls instead of her usual bun. A pair of borrowed glasses perched on her nose. She looked like a stranger in her own skin, but that was the point. She needed to be someone Javier wouldn't recognize. And then she saw her, Angela. Sitting at a corner table sipping tea, scrolling her phone, her face open and warm. Maria's chest tightened. This was the woman who had unknowingly stepped into the web. Maria ordered a coffee, then, accidentally dropped her bag as she passed Angela's table. Books and papers scattered. "Oh, let me help you," Angela said, crouching quickly, gathering the fallen items. "Thank you," Maria replied with a rehearsed, nervous smile. "I'm such a mess today." "No worries. We all have those days." Angela laughed softly, her kindness genuine. That was the opening. Within minutes, Maria introduced herself as Eleanor, a freelance writer new to the area. Angela, ever welcoming, offered company, and soon the two were chatting like acquaintances who could become friends. Over the next few weeks, Maria cultivated the fragile bond. They met for coffee, for short walks, for casual lunches. Angela spoke easily, never suspecting that the woman across from her carried a storm of secrets. It was during one of these lunches that Maria gently steered the conversation toward Angela's family. "You're so lucky," Maria said, forcing a demurration into her tone. "I'm here all alone. But you seem to have such a beautiful life. Your husband, your children." Angela's eyes lit up. "Oh, yes. Javier is everything. He's been through so much, you know. He lost his first wife years ago. Tragic accident. It nearly destroyed him." Maria's grip on her cup tightened until her knuckles turned white. Widowed? The word rang in her ears like a cruel joke. She remembered nights of bruises, of betrayal, of courtroom pleas. She remembered him alive, sentenced, not grieving. Angela's voice softened. But he pulled through. He rebuilt himself. Now he runs his own business, import and export. It's demanding, but he's good at it. And the kids adore him. Maria forced a smile, but her mind reeled. Import and export. A convenient cover. A tragic past. A fabricated lie. Every word Angela spoke was another brick in the false life Javier had constructed. As Angela reached across the table to squeeze her hand, Maria noticed something else. Trust. Complete, unguarded trust. Angela's gaze held no suspicion, no shadow. She believed Javier's story entirely, and Maria, for the first time, felt a pang of guilt. Angela wasn't her enemy. She was a woman walking blindly into a storm she didn't know existed. Later, as Maria left the cafe, the weight of what she had learned pressed heavily on her chest. Javier hadn't just abandoned her. He hadn't just lied. He had rewritten his history, erasing the prison, erasing the violence, erasing her. He had crafted a mask so perfect that even the woman closest to him couldn't see the cracks. Maria stood at the curb, watching cars blur past, her reflection trembling in the cafe window. She whispered to herself, "She has no idea who he really is." And with that realization came a terrible responsibility. Maria left Angela's home with a heaviness in her chest, the weight of memory clawing its way back from the shadows. The glow of Angela's trusting smile haunted her, not because it was wrong, but because it was familiar. Maria had once smiled like that, soft, safe, believing she was loved. And look where it had led her. The drive back to her small apartment blurred past. Her thoughts splintered between past and present, weaving together into a chilling realization. Javier hadn't changed. He was simply replaying the same performance with a new audience. Only now, he was more careful, more polished, as if years of deception had perfected his act. She remembered the early days of their marriage. Javier's charm was intoxicating. He spoke in a way that made her feel singular, chosen. When he laughed, rooms seemed lighter. When he listened, the world disappeared. But beneath the devotion lay cracks, tiny at first, almost invisible. A comment about her clothing being too revealing. A raised brow when she spoke to another man for too long. At the time, she mistook it for love. She thought his jealousy meant she mattered. It wasn't long before jealousy turned into possession. Maria recalled one night, a dinner with old friends. She had laughed at a joke, a harmless one, and when they returned home, Javier's smile evaporated. He slammed the door, his hands shaking. "Do you think they respect you when you behave like that?" he hissed. She tried to explain, but his anger grew cold, suffocating. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened, placing a cup of coffee beside her with a kiss on the forehead. The cycle of rage and tenderness began there, and it never ended. Now, watching Angela fall into the same rhythm, Maria's stomach twisted. She saw it in the way Angela glanced at Javier for reassurance before speaking, or how her story paused if he entered the room. It was subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but Maria had lived inside that cage. She knew its bars. The flashbacks came unbidden. Javier's voice, warm one moment, slicing the next. His hands, gentle, then tightening around her wrist until she couldn't breathe. His words, crafted to make her doubt herself. "You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. You always twist my intentions." Gaslighting, she would later learn. At the time, she only felt confusion, shame, fear. Maria pressed her palms against her steering wheel, forcing herself back to the present. Angela had no idea. She believed Javier's story, a widower who had rebuilt his life from tragedy, a businessman carrying scars but offering loyalty. Angela was caught in the glow, the stage light Javier projected. And why wouldn't she believe it? He had rehearsed it for years, sculpting a mask so flawless that anyone would fall for it. But beneath the mask, Maria knew, lurked something darker. She had witnessed it firsthand, the fits of rage, the bruises she had concealed, the whispers of his business deals that never quite made sense. And when he vanished into prison, part of her had felt a sick relief. She thought the nightmare was over. She thought she was free. Yet here he was again, out in the world, with new lies, a new woman, and children who called him Papa. Maria's chest tightened with a mixture of anger and dread. The puzzle pieces shifted in her mind. Javier's pattern wasn't random. It was deliberate. A web of control he spun around anyone who entered his orbit. Angela was tangled now, just as Maria once had been. And worse, Maria realized this wasn't just about love or manipulation anymore. The inconsistencies in the prison records, the fear she had glimpsed in Javier's eyes when she confronted him, they all pointed to something bigger. His lies stretched further than she ever imagined. Maria stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her face looked older, harder, carved by years of survival. For the first time in years, she felt clarity. She had escaped Javier once, but Angela and those children were still trapped. Her hands trembled as she whispered aloud, as though confessing to the silence of her car. "I can't let him do this again." The decision hung in the air, fragile but certain. Maria knew exposing him would come with consequences, but she also knew the cost of silence. And so, with trembling resolve, she pulled out her phone and scrolled to the one person who might believe her story. The message she typed was brief, but carried the weight of everything. "We need to talk. It's about Javier." Maria hit send on the message and tucked her phone back into her purse, the weight of her decision pressing on her like a stone. The night was thick and humid as she stepped out of her car, the street unusually quiet. Too quiet. Her instincts prickled first, a sensation she had learned not to ignore after years with Javier. She glanced over her shoulder. The street lamps threw weak halos on the cracked sidewalk, but between those circles of light lay darkness, and in one of those shadows she thought she saw movement. Her breath caught. She slowed her steps, heart hammering. Maybe it was nothing, a stray dog, a shifting tree. But when she quickened her pace, the faint rhythm of footsteps echoed behind her. Maria's mind raced. Javier. Of course. He had always been 10 steps ahead, even when she thought she was free. If he sensed she was snooping, he would act. and he wouldn't get his hands dirty himself. No, Javier preferred to remain untouchable, to let others do the dangerous work, while he kept his smile clean. She turned down a narrow street, hoping to shake the figure. The footsteps followed, steady and deliberate. Her palms were slick with sweat now. She dug in her purse, fumbling for her keys, anything sharp she could wield as a weapon. Then she caught a glimpse. A man lingered just at the edge of the lamp. Light, tall, shoulders hunched beneath a dark jacket. His face stayed obscured, but his posture radiated intent. He wasn't a passerby. He was watching her, tracking her. Maria's pulse surged. She darted across the street and slipped into the entrance of a small convenience store. The bell above the door jingled, startling her. The clerk looked up with a bored expression, but Maria barely noticed. She kept her eyes fixed on the glass door. The shadow stopped outside. He didn't come in. He didn't move on either. He just stood there, half hidden, waiting. Maria pretended to browse the shelves, though her hands shook as she touched the cans and boxes. The minutes dragged on, each one stretching like wire pulled too tight. Finally, she forced herself toward the register, buying a bottle of water she didn't need. When she left the store, the man was gone. Relief surged, too quickly, because as she walked toward her apartment, the silence pressed in again. She couldn't shake the feeling that eyes still trailed her, unseen but present. By the time she reached her building, Maria's nerves were raw. She locked the door behind her and slid down against it, trembling. Her phone buzzed with a new message, but she couldn't bring herself to check it. Every instinct screamed that she had crossed a line, that Javier knew. The image of Angela's trusting smile flickered in her mind. The children's drawings taped proudly on the fridge. They were living in the web now, blind to the predator at its center, and Maria, by digging, by confronting, had marked herself as prey again. She pressed her forehead against her knees, breathing hard. If she exposed Javier, she risked not only her own life but anyone she turned to for help. But if she stayed silent, Angela and the children would remain trapped in his illusion until it shattered, likely with violence. The phone buzzed again. Maria forced hers. Elf to look. A new message. Not from the person she had reached out to. From an unknown number. The words were simple, but they drained the blood from her face. Stop asking questions. Her hand trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. He wasn't just watching her. He was already inside her world, listening, waiting, warning. Maria closed her eyes, panic battling resolve. There was no turning back now. The shadows were closing in, and if she wanted to survive them, she would have to step deeper into the darkness herself. Maria barely slept after receiving the chilling message. Stop asking questions. The words pulsed through her mind like a threat tattooed onto her skin. But fear, rather than stopping her, sharpened into determination. If Javier thought intimidation would silence her, he had forgotten who she had become in the years since their marriage. The next morning, she returned to the one place she swore she would never step foot in again. The courthouse. The marble steps loomed high, and with each one she climbed, she felt the weight of the past pressing harder on her shoulders. She walked straight to the records office, her hands clammy as she requested access to the files on Javier Alvarez. The clerk, a young man with tired eyes, scrolled through the database. Strange, he muttered. The sentencing order is here, but no transfer record to the prison facility. Maria leaned closer. What do you mean, no transfer record? He shrugged, lowering his voice. Paperwork usually follows. This file, it looks like it just stops. Her heart pounded. She asked for a printed copy. He hesitated, then slid the papers across the counter with a nervous glance. You didn't get this from me, he whispered. The documents were riddled with inconsistencies, a judge's signature that looked forged, dates overlapping with no explanation, and, most damning, a sealed section marked confidential, Judicial access only. That night, Maria spread the papers across her kitchen table. Each page confirmed what her gut had screamed from the moment she saw Javier Al. If in Texas, he was never truly imprisoned. Someone had orchestrated his disappearance, cloaked under the illusion of justice. But who? Her search grew obsessive. She combed through online records, old newspaper clippings, even local gossip forums. The more she dug, the darker the picture became. A pattern of suspicious cases emerged. Wealthy men convicted of violent crimes who somehow slipped through the cracks, vanishing into new lives. Javier wasn't an anomaly. He was part of a machine. One evening, Maria drove back to the courthouse, this time with a plan. She waited in her car until an older records officer, Mrs. McAdams, left for the evening. Maria approached her gently, her voice trembling with urgency. "Please," Maria begged. "I need the truth about my husband's case. I know something was buried." The woman's lined face stiffened, her eyes darting nervously. "I could lose my job for even talking about it." "Then don't talk," Maria said softly, slipping a folded bill into the woman's hand. "Just point me in the right direction." The hesitation stretched, but eventually Mrs. McAdams sighed. "There are files, sealed files that shouldn't be sealed, and people paid a lot to make sure they stay that way. Judges, wardens, even prosecutors. Your husband didn't serve a single day. He bought his freedom." Maria's stomach turned. Bought, not earned, not fought for. Bought. And the currency was blood and silence. The woman lowered her voice. "If you're smart, you'll stop digging. People who know too much about these arrangements, they don't last." Maria nodded, pretending to agree, but the fire inside her blazed hotter. Javier hadn't just betrayed her. He had manipulated the entire system, rewriting his past with money and power until it erased every trace of justice. When she returned home, she locked every door and pulled the blinds tight. She sat at the table, the evidence spread before her like a puzzle only she could solve. But now she understood the stakes. This wasn't just about her marriage, or Angela, or the children. It was bigger. Javier was a man protected by shadows, by people who profited from his lies. And if she exposed him, she wouldn't just be fighting Javier. She'd be fighting an entire network designed to keep him untouchable. Maria stared at the papers, her pulse steady now. She could feel the danger pressing in, closer than ever. But she also felt clarity. For the first time since spotting Javier on that Texas street, she knew the truth, and the truth was a weapon, one Javier would kill to keep buried. Maria knew she couldn't keep the truth locked inside any longer. The sealed documents, the forged signatures, the whispered warning from the records officer. They weren't just pieces of evidence. They were Angela's life, hanging by a thread. Every day Angela stayed in Javier's world was another day. Maria risked hearing of a tragedy she could have prevented. The next evening, Maria waited until Angela left the grocery store. She approached her slowly, nerves coiled tight, rehearsing words she never thought she'd speak. "Angela," Maria called softly. Angela turned, polite but guarded. "Oh, it's you. From the other day. Did you need something?" Maria swallowed hard. "Yes, but it's not easy to say. It's about your husband." The instant the word husband left her lips, Angela's smile faltered. She shifted the grocery bag in her arms. "What about him?" Maria drew a shaky breath. "Javier wasn't in business meetings all those years. He was in prison, or at least he should have been. He lied to you. He lied about everything." Angela let out a sharp laugh, more defensive than amused. "That's ridiculous. Javier lost his first wife in an accident. He's a good man. He saved me when I was at my lowest." "Saved you?" Maria whispered, voice cracking. He destroyed me. I was his wife, Angela. He was violent, manipulative, dangerous. And now he's hiding behind you and your children. The silence between them thickened. Angela's hands trembled against the paper bag. This is crazy. You must have mistaken him for someone else. Maria shook her head and pulled a folded document from her bag, the copy of Javier's sentencing order. His name, his case number. This isn't a mistake. Angela stared at the paper as if it might burn her fingers. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, Maria saw it, the flicker of doubt piercing Angela's certainty. But before Angela could respond, a sharp voice cut through the night. Angela! Both women froze. Javier stood at the end of the lot, his dark eyes fixed on them, his jaw rigid. He strode forward, each step heavy with fury. Angela instinctively hid the paper behind her back. Javier, What are you doing with her? His voice was calm, but Maria recognized the storm beneath. She had lived through it. Angela's voice quivered. She says she knew you before. That you... Enough. Javier's gaze snapped to Maria. His eyes were no longer the charming husband, the devoted father. They were cold, predatory, stripped of all pretense. You just can't stay buried, can you? He hissed. Maria stood her ground, though her knees shook. She deserves the truth, Javier. They all do. In one swift motion, Javier seized Angela's arm, yanking her close. And you believe her? A bitter ex-wife with nothing but lies? His grip tightened, and Angela winced. Javier, you're hurting me, she whispered. The words ignited something raw in Maria. Memories of the same bruises, the same whispered pleas, crashed over her. Let her go, she shouted, her voice breaking with rage. For a split second, Javier's mask slipped completely. His face twisted with the unrestrained violence he had always kept just beneath the surface. You think you can take my family from me? He snarled. Angela pulled free, stumbling back, horror dawning in heat. Kudike. The air was thick with the inevitability of what came next. For Angela, the safety of her children had just collided with the monster she shared her home with. And for Maria, the fight was no longer about the past. It was about survival. The night of the confrontation left scars neither woman could erase. Angela, shaken to her core, finally chose the path Maria had begged her to take. Within hours she was at the police station, children huddled close, filing a report that would ignite a storm. Maria, pale but resolute, backed her testimony with documents, photographs, and every fragment she had uncovered. The law, at last, closed its grip around Javier Alvarez. When officers came for him, the mask was already shattered. Javier didn't fight the cuffs. He smirked, as though certain that bars could not hold him, that money and connections would always pave the way out. But the real battle wasn't in the arrest. It was in the trial. Weeks later, Maria stepped into a Texas courtroom, the air thick with anticipation. The wooden benches creaked with journalists, curious neighbors, and strangers hungry for scandal. She felt the weight of every eye, every whisper. Javier sat at the defense table, suited and smug, as if the courtroom were his stage. Angela sat across the aisle, her gaze lowered, hands trembling in her lap. Maria wanted to reach out, but the gulf between them was too raw, too fragile. The prosecutor laid the story bare. Javier's supposed incarceration, the forged records, the new identity, the violence hidden behind charm. Witnesses were called, evidence displayed. For a moment, hope flickered. Then Javier took his turn. On the stand, his voice dripped with practiced sincerity. I loved Maria once, he said, staring at the jury, but she could never let go. Even after our marriage ended, she followed me, harassed me, obsessed over me. Now she's trying to destroy the family I built. His lawyer chimed in,
hammering the same theme. Maria was unstable, vindictive, desperate for attention. They waved away the documents as forgeries, the testimonies as embellishments. Maria sat frozen, nails digging into her palms. The words weren't just lies. They were echoes of every gaslit moment she had endured in her marriage. The courtroom blurred, memories bleeding into the present, his rage in the kitchen, his apologies whispered after bruises, the way he made her question her own sanity. When her name was called, Maria walked to the stand with leaden steps. "State your name for the record." "Maria Alvarez," she said, voice shaking. The questions began. She told them about the violence, the manipulation, the years stolen from her life. She explained how she had discovered the truth, how Javier had deceived everyone. But as she spoke, the defense circled like vultures. "Isn't it true you were jealous of Angela?" The lawyer sneered. "No," Maria whispered. "Isn't it true you've been stalking Javier for years?" Her throat closed. "I was trying to protect—" "Answer the question." "No." Each word felt like a blade. She could feel the jury's eyes on her, weighing her against the man who knew how to smile at the right moment, to tilt his head just so, to appear the victim. Angela was called next. Her testimony shook the room. "I believed him," she admitted, voice breaking. "But when he grabbed me that night, when I saw the rage in his eyes, I knew Maria was telling the truth." Still, doubt lingered. Javier leaned back in his chair, calm, as if the verdict were already written in his favor. Maria could see it. The manipulation wasn't over. It never was. When court adjourned that evening, Maria walked out, trembling, unsure whether justice was even possible. She had faced him, told her truth, but the system had a way of bending beneath the ways, out of men like Javier. Outside, she pressed her back to the cold stone wall and closed her eyes. The trial wasn't just about proving Javier's crimes. It was about proving that her own voice still mattered, that the years he had stolen hadn't erased her completely. But as the next hearing loomed, one question haunted her. Would the jury see through his lies, or would they let him walk free to rebuild the empire of control all over again? The courtroom was silent enough to hear the shuffle of the bailiff's shoes as he handed the slip of paper to the judge. Maria held her breath, her heart pounding so loud she thought the jurors might hear it. The foreman rose, his voice steady but distant, as though from another world. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Javier Alvarez, guilty." For a moment, time fractured. Maria's knees nearly buckled. She gripped the edge of the bench until her knuckles whitened, unable to process that the words she had begged the world to hear had finally been spoken aloud. Across the room, Javier's expression barely flickered. No panic, no remorse, just a cold, defiant stare fixed on Maria. Even in chains, even condemned, he wanted her to know he hadn't lost completely. The gavel struck. The judge's words declared years of imprisonment. Reporters scribbled. Murmurs rose from the benches. Maria heard none of it. All she felt was the hollow echo of victory. Outside, cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. "Maria, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you think justice was served?" Their voices clawed at her, hungry for a soundbite. She didn't answer. She walked past them, numb, the autumn wind catching her hair. Justice had been spoken, yes, but peace? That was something else entirely. In the days that followed, Maria became both survivor and spectacle. Some praised her courage, but others whispered. Was she exaggerating? Maybe she just wanted revenge. Every headline carved a new wound. She couldn't escape the judgment, not from strangers, not even from neighbors she had known for years. At the grocery store, a woman glanced at her cart, then at her face, and whispered to a friend. At church, pitying looks followed her down the aisle, as though she carried a permanent scarlet letter. Angela, too, suffered in silence. She moved away with her children, packing the pieces of her broken life into cardboard boxes. Before she left, she hugged Maria once in the dim light of her front porch. "I believed him," Angela whispered, tears hot against Maria's shoulder. "I let him into my children's lives. I don't know how to forgive myself." Maria squeezed her tighter. "It wasn't your fault. He fooled us both. That's what he does." But Angela only shook her head, pulling away. The next morning, she was gone. Maria's home became unbearably quiet. She tried to return to work, to routines, but everything felt different. The walls held echoes of the trial, the past, the nights she had spent questioning her sanity. Even sleep brought no relief. Only dreams of Javier's voice twisting in her ears, of his shadow at the edge of her bed. One evening, Maria sat alone with a candle burning on the table. The verdict papers lay folded beside her. She touched them, tracing the letters with her fingertip. Guilty. The word was real, but it didn't feel like freedom. She thought of the years lost, the lies endured, the strength it had taken just to stand in that courtroom. Justice had been served, yes, but the price was steep. Trust was gone. Safety was gone. The illusion that life could ever be simple again had shattered forever. And yet, in the cracks of her sorrow, something else stirred. A fragile ember. She had spoken when it would have been easier to stay silent. She had faced the man who once defined her and told the truth, even when no one wanted to hear it. Tomorrow would be no brighter, no softer, but she would face it, scarred and weary, yet unbroken, because in the end, justice wasn't a clean victory. It was a battlefield strewn with wreckage, a haunting reminder that truth sets you free, but never without leaving a mark.